Great. So let's get started, folks. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Today, we're going to present the product update webinar for October 2021. And on today's call, we're going to go through a series of conversations around some of the more interesting features that we've released this year. And more particularly, we want to talk a little bit about, how to use them. And I think this is something that's, kind of new to us. And, we haven't done presentations in this format before, but I think what we're looking to do here is to, as we release new functionality on a monthly basis, is to have a webinar like this really focused on the individual new features, updates, enhancements that are in each release, and really give folks a better understanding of how to use them and utilize them. And a lot of the features and the product updates that we do release, they do come from customers and our partners themselves, and a lot of them have been used in implementations. And so there's some really, really great ideas, and we want to be able to, share them more frequently now. So, this is really kind of like the first in its series, and we'll, spend a little less time focusing on some of the sales and marketing aspect of this, but and really now spend more time on deep diving into the features, the functionality, and how to really use it. Folks who are on the call, most of you looks like we all know each other. Yeah. So, hey, everyone. You've probably heard me before. Abhi, Nerurkar, I'm one of the co-founders over here. And really our presenters today are going to be Deven, Shah, and Tony Kiratsous. Go ahead, Deven, you can say hi.
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon.
Cool. And Tony, you there too, right?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is Tony Kiratsous. Looking forward to showing everyone the new enhancements in EPMware.
Cool. So yeah, Deven, go ahead. You can kind of get started and move us on to the next slide.
Yeah, thanks. So welcome, everyone. So what we're going to cover today is the major features that we introduced in 2021, Q1, Q2, Q3, and the latest release in October that is in your test environment, and which will go to production this Friday. So again, we must have shown this you before you became a customer, that what do we do as an EPMware? So Abhi, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So those of you that haven't used EPMware before, or it's been a while since you've actually taken a look at it or spoken to us, EPMware has controlled and governed change. It's a central hub and spoke metadata management, data governance application. So typically we are used as users will reach out into EPMware, visualize their metadata hierarchies, and then create a brand new request for change. EPMware does reflect the change across multiple different applications and does give the user a visual representation of how that change looks. Now, most of the time that change can be driven by an end user, either an admin or a business user. And then sometimes that change can be driven by a source application. So what we frequently see in a lot of our implementations is a hybrid example of this, where we may have a metadata dimension that's sourced from an external application, maybe like an employee dimension that flows into EPMware. And then we also have users who will author metadata directly in EPMware. Both of those changes have the ability to go through an extensive workflow and governance process, or even a lights out workflow and governance process. Real-time validations and audit change logs are the foundation, the backbone of this process. And finally, the metadata is ready for deployment to any target application. So as most of you know, we do have target adapters to these applications, and we're continuing to add to the arsenal. We can always add integrations to interface tables, flat files, and lately REST API subscriptions are becoming more and more popular. So, all in EPMware really is known as the source of truth for master data and data governance. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Some of the examples of our target adapters listed over here. Of course, we support all of the Oracle on-prem and cloud applications. ERP, Oracle Financials Cloud, EBS are some of the more recent additions. OneStream was just added as well. And, we're continuing to add additional adapters. Now, these adapters are treated as truly plug and play, where you're very easily importing that metadata into EPMware within the first 10 to 15 minutes of beginning to use it. And then you're able to also deploy metadata to that target application. So the benefit of this really is to be able to spend less time developing the technical capabilities and the technical integrations of EPMware to target applications, and to spend time, more time on building workflow and governance within the application, and now transferring the ownership of metadata to the business user. Right. So folks on the call, feel free to at any time kind of raise your hands and enter any questions into the chat box. We'll take a break every few slides and just see if there's any questions that are relevant to asking folks that are, existing customers. If you have questions on specific, how would I do this or how would I do that? We're happy to, take those questions, during the session, or, even at the end of the call. So, Deven, next slide. And I believe that one is yours.
Okay. Yeah. So, what are the releases? What is the frequency of it? We get this question often too. So we release every month. Release schedule is that first Friday or second Friday of every month in UAT, depending on if the first Friday is the first of a month, then we try to put it on the second Friday. Or so subsequently after 2 weeks, we deploy to the production environment. All the release details will be on that URL on the epmware.com/documentation. And if you want to add your users or admins into the distribution list, just send us an email at support@epmware.com. We will also try to create a monthly webinar for every release going forward, depending on the feedback and how reaction is from the users. So we will have 3-4 slides today in essence. So I'm going to cover Q1, Q2, Q3, and the latest release very quickly. So what did we do in Q1? We added the 3 new adapters of Oracle Fusion, which is kind of EBS on cloud. We added another cloud applications from Oracle Text Reconciliation Cloud Services, which works very similar to PBCS and FCCS or PCMCS. We added all the features of the OneStream adapter with extensibility included. So these are the 3 brand new adapters. We enhanced the node level security, which is very powerful feature, and I'll demonstrate that to you. We added a bunch of logic builder APIs. Again, that is very technical information, but using the logic builder API, you can send email, you can detect whether attachment is there for the request or not, and whatnot. We also added a new feature of custom properties and auto backup and restore of it. We will talk about that as well. And we added 2 main analytical reports for the workflow statistics and dimension statistics. So let's cover all these 5 topics in the actual app. First 3 is very simple, the adapters. So I'll go to my test environment, go over here, and if you were to register a new application, say TRCS, then there is a new application called TRCS as a seeded application type available for you. As soon as, like other applications, as soon as you register TRCS, a OneStream, PCMCS, or Oracle Fusion Cloud, automatically it will create all the property sets, the dimension classes, the connectivity for you. All you need to do is fill in the properties so that you can connect to those applications as an example for Essbase here. Same thing you have to do for the Fusion and TRCS. Okay.
And Deven, I had one question on this, on the properties. We do support for Essbase and for PBCS, like adding certain flags into those properties, right? To create different behavior, like restructure the cube and so on.
Yes, that is very correct. So if you want to automatically restructure, say, after deploying to PBCS, so let me go to PBCS, then you should be able to see automatically restructure the cubes. That happens also on the PBCS side too. So some of the setups are on the PBCS side, but some of the setups are on EPMware side, like the switches. So I have to show you the example of an on-prem planning app. Okay. I don't have an example here right now with me. I don't remember on top of my head.
I think if you just use that plan, the one just called planning, that would probably work out. Just if you go down to the P's, just go to planning.
Okay, yeah. So we have the switches here, like outline load switches. This allows you to automatically restructure. For example, if I believe it's /R or something, that will allow you to automatically restructure the cubes or refresh the cubes. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Okay, so the and feel free to ask questions. So Abhi, you can collect the question and let me know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So enhanced node level security. So often we get a requirement during the project implementation that if I'm looking at my, say, hierarchy, in this case, say product hierarchies, the requirement is that the set of users should be able to request, review, or update anything under all merchandise hierarchy only. And the another set of users should be able to request, review, or approve the high-end merchandise. So how do we do that, right? So in order to do this, earlier, like a few years ago, we used to write pre-logic script, pre-hierarchy action logic script, and used to prevent the user from making action if they are not part of the certain group. So that was a security model. But early this year, actually late last year, we introduced the node level, enhanced node level security. So what happens here is that we do have to do two things. We have to assign a security class to the nodes that you are planning to have the security assigned to them. Like in this case, all merchandise and high merchandise for these nodes. And then you can, using a provisioning, say, for example, I go say review or say requester. Right, then you now over here, if I search for say merchandise, there you go. Now you can see that there is a write access for all and no access for the high-end merchandise. And I'm part of the say requester group. So if I go over here under all merchandise, I see the option to perform all the actions that are eligible. But over here, I'm not. So without doing any coding or logic script, now you have achieved the node level security. Now this is for the requester, but you can do the same thing for the reviewer and approver. So this is very simple to implement. And security class is again our own security classes that you can define under the security module over here. One thing you need to do before you use this feature is enable the node level security for the application. So this is your master switch to turn on and off in case you are troubleshooting something. So enable node level security has to be turned on, and then only this solution will kick in. New logic builder APIs. So this is very technical, but I'll give you a little bit of an overview that using the APIs, you can send an email to the customers. You can send requests, line to be created in the request automatically and whatnot. There is over hundreds of APIs. Highly recommend to look into those documentation. and your technical team can reach out to us if there is any question. Now, auto backup and restore of custom properties. So often we get a requirement that we need to create custom properties on top of S-based HFM and planning, for example, right? So if I create custom properties and I'm working on it, I am in my UAT environment and I want to like refresh my metadata from the target app, then I will lose all my metadata for the custom properties as well. When you go to application and you can say right click and say delete metadata only, you lose all your custom properties as well. Going forward, you don't have to. So
and for folks, those of you that may not have used custom properties in your application, custom properties really are properties that are specific to the EPMware application, and they augment your existing local application properties to be able to capture additional detail that you will not deploy to a target application, or you might actually just deploy it to a non-Hyperion or non-technology type of application. So typical examples of this are, business justification or any other properties that you need to gather that you may need to run calculations on to derive other local application properties. And the way we've seen these used are to populate these properties with either logic or values to be able to blend in a total set of information into a view of your local application hierarchy. Now, again, if you're like, let's just say you're managing something for HFM and you have custom application properties for those to be able to allow the user to input what their consolidation percentage is, you necessarily will not deploy that to HFM because it's not a property per se, but that information can be then gathered by an administrator to be able to populate the consolidation percentage for that entity down the road. But it's a clever way to kind of pull some of those fields out of a existing request template that you have right now, and then allow the end user to populate them within a EPMware request screen. Another way we've used custom properties are just simply for a generic hierarchy. So if you're not managing a hierarchy that EPMware directly deploys to a Oracle or SAP type of application, then you may have a data structure for a data warehouse, and every single property there would be pretty much a custom property. And each of those, like as Deven showing here, can have the specific behavior of required, read only, and so on. So go ahead, Deven.
Thanks. So, like for example, I'm creating a brand new property for the product dimension, and this is the it automatically will mark it as backup enabled because it knows that you are adding a new property for the standard application. So automatically it will assign this flag to you. By the way, we introduced another feature which is actually not on the slide, which should have been, is that display on create member pop-up. So I'll show you that as well. So basically what it means that this field will be available when you try to create a new member. So let's save this and see what happens here. All right, suppose I go over here and I want to create a new member. It will, okay, let me create a new member. I have to refresh it though. Okay, All right, say, all right, school bags. All right, okay, there's some problem. Okay, basically I have not done this setup here. Okay, let me take this off for now. I need to refresh my cache. All right. So now you have this custom property, and I enter all the values. Say, it's a wrong example. Business justification or a new product, okay, for students. All right. So now, what happens? You worked on this. You added a lot of information about this standard application, which is the SWIS app. Now, if you decide to blow away all this metadata and you want to refresh from the target app, and this happens more on the UAT environment, then you don't want to lose all these custom properties you have added over here. But because we have added this backup enable property here, it will automatically restore it for you. So in order for this to function properly, you need to again go back here and over here and enable custom properties backup. By default, it's no, but if you enable it, then it will start taking the backup of the custom properties. And as soon as you refresh the metadata from target app, those properties will come back automatically. So you don't have to reload it, because the metadata will come from SWIS app as an example, but the custom properties you have added manually using bulk upload or just by manually entering it. Those we don't want to lose, so it comes back automatically. So you have
and to supplement what Devin's saying here is that this is really using, when you're initially loading in a hierarchy in EPMware and you have values for custom properties, we pull in the application directly from the target application when we're going through a development cycle. And these custom properties are usually supplemented via CSV or some method after the application is automatically imported into EPMware. So once that is done, very commonly we see that customers during the project cycle will update these custom properties, or even if we're cutting over to production, or moving over to a different phase and the metadata is continuing to change, then we're going to likely do another fresh import of a hierarchy before we cut over to production. And so we don't want to lose that development work that's already been done of seeding these properties, because if you just delete that application and reload it in again, for your local application properties, you're going to get them in right away. But your custom application properties, you're going to lose them if you delete the application. So here, what we do is we kind of store those values. And when EPMware does a fresh pull of metadata, it then reapplies those values back to the custom property. So this was an example that we kind of built out of necessity, because it would have taken just an enormous amount of time to have to reload custom property values every time you do a refresh. And we've seen that sometimes folks do a rationalization exercise during their implementation, and a continuous refresh of metadata is likely as we are going through the development process and building requirements into the application.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. To support this, we have a lot of options in the reports and in the migration module as well. So I'll quickly go through that. And my next topic is the statistics reports anyway. So if you go to reports, we have analytics. So we have added like 3 reports. The purpose of these reports are to help you analyze where the time is spent when the request is initiated by the requester and till it gets deployed to the target app. So this will give you a little bit of an idea about which stage is taking more time than average number of days the other requests take. So I'm going to quickly run this, and let's quickly overview these parameters. So workflow, you can filter by workflow, application, or request status. And then you have the aging buckets. So you can see how many requests have completed between 0 to 7 days and etc. And this is a very powerful report. This will help you in case you are trying to streamline your approval processes and make them more efficient. So for example, this is like an example workflow, right? And these are the number of requests it processed, and for each total number of days it took, and average is 33 days, which is pretty bad, but um, um, how many requests it took for this stage to complete, which is say number of requests is 8, and say 1. And again, this is my test data, so we are just creating some bunch of test data. But in your production environment, you should see real data.
And expect to see some of this stuff kind of, get to a dashboard eventually in 2022. I mean, one of the larger enhancements we're working on is to, populate a dashboard with details such as, what metadata is frequently changing, what's happening within a workflow, and so on. And so this is a critical analytic piece of information that folks have asked for. But we want to kind of bring this to the forefront and make sure that it's really kind of relevant and in your face when you log in, so that as an admin or a user, you're able to get a better sense of which stage is taking longer and why, right? And if you have certain expectations of your users to really get into EPMware, maybe the answer is to set up some automated notifications within EPMware, or to just keep auto spamming people, I think, right?
That leads to the next topic, which is which is the workflow task reminders. We will talk about that as well, how to annoy people. Sorry.
No, and I think a lot of folks that we've spoken to have really said, we've assigning responsibility to our workflow users, but they're not really coming in and taking action. So this will tell us how long it'll take for certain users or groups to come in and take action on their requests. But ultimately, we're looking for our users to get in and actually make the necessary reviews and approvals as fast as possible to keep this metadata moving, because behind the metadata likely is a data load somewhere, and I'm sure your users want to get the data into these target applications as fast as possible. So this is helpful in kind of understanding that information.
Right, and it also implies, based on our experience and feedback, that sometimes user needs a little bit more training. So if you can target that, okay, if this group is taking quite longer than the average number of expected days, so you can reach out to those folks and ask them, okay, why it is taking longer? How can we make their life better? Do they need extra time to review reports and etc.? So there are the feedback we have got is that those things do help, and it reduces the time it takes to deploy the request with the production or get an approval for that specific stage.
Have you asked somebody, how can you make your life better?
From my wife?
I'm scared as to what the answer is to that.
So this is a straight, simple report like dimension statistics. If you want to know how many nodes and how many properties of different categories are there, you can feel free to run this report. This will help you analyze how big is your metadata size in case you ever need to analyze that. The third report is the same like workflow statistics, but at the request level. So this is a little bit more granular in case you ever want to know like why this particular request or bunch of requests took longer time. All right. So that is in a nutshell. Of course, there were a lot of bug fixes and minor enhancements, but I'm just covering like just the major features that could really make admins' life easier here. All right.
Bugs?
Of course. Of course, all our users are aware of it. It's no harm in saying that. Okay, so feel free to ask me any question for the Q1 on these features.
Yeah, I don't have audio turned on, so we'll ask in the chat box so you can continue moving along.
Sure. So in Q2, we added support for the Okta for single sign-on, especially for OneStream. it's a simple feature, but it makes life easier for all those customers who are plan or currently using Okta. Now, the second one is sounds simple, but it's very important for audit point of view. Show user comments in the request activity log. The reason I picked this up so that people are aware that in the activity log, which is over here in the request for, we have to show all the comments, all the activity that user performs on a request. So this becomes very useful in terms of troubleshooting, in terms of audit, in terms of administrator going back here and finding out what every user did. So as you know that we have user comments here, all those user added comments will also get added into the comment log over here at the bottom, as you can see. So we really, and reject reason, if you recall any particular line, then we also capture that over here. So just FYI, in Q1, we also added the recall and reject reasons that you can enforce the user have to enter for the workflow. I'll just quickly show you that over here.
Yeah, so before this enhancement, we had the comments where the user could have a comment. We had the activity log, but it was just system messages. So basically this enhancement kind of just tied the two together, right? So now the comments, you don't have to go up to the comments box to see the comments, to go on the activity log to see the system messages. It kind of tied them together so you can see everything in the activity log. So
right. And it's from an audit point of view and administrator point of view, it's very important. As we are talking about comments, we also added these two new additional features for at the workflow level, where you as an administrator can enforce that user has to provide comments if the user is rejecting a line or a user is recalling the request from any stage to any of the prior stage. So we added that. We will also talk about restrict recall in a minute, but this is coming into the Q3, I believe. So we'll talk about that as well. So these comments that user when enters will be captured in the activity log. New reports. Now, often we get a request from the administrator that we need to know who did what, right? In terms of configuration changes. So we added a bunch of reports for that as well. So for audit point of view, like if you go to say configuration audit and you can select object type that you see under the configuration menu, and you can find out who did what, who made what configurations, right? Or who updated the configurations, right? And this report will tell you all about it. So this is more for an audit trail, like, okay, this application was created by admin and updated by this user. Has it been updated after the initial creation? So this gives you an idea about, okay, if I created my application in January, I shouldn't be seeing any update to it, but somebody made a change, then what changes it? So auditors look for it. So we have added that. We have added one for this security as well, like security audit report, which will give you pretty much similar output that when the user was created, when the user was added in the group, and etc. So feel free to explore these reports. List of custom properties enabled for backup. So yeah, this is what I wanted to cover, that we have added a bunch of reports for the backup enabled properties. So if you go to configuration, these I think it's under metadata. Yeah, backup enabled properties metadata. So using this report, you can say, for example, I just ran a report, created a custom property for product dimension. So by running this report, it will give me the information about this custom property. So now this information you will not get from the target app because this resides only in EPMware. So we carved out a separate report apart from the regular reports. You can run regular reports and it will show this property over there as well, which is a bunch of reports like generations, hierarchies, hierarchy with the properties, and so on. But this is a separate report in case you are trying to reconcile the custom properties with other applications.
Go down.
All right. Any question? Oh, okay, I know the questions are coming in the end. All right. So coming back to the 2021 Q3. So we have to be on top of what Oracle releases as well. So Oracle introduced the OCI Gen 2 type authentication for PBCS. So any customer who's trying to use PBCS OCI Gen 2, we support authentication method as well. So you don't have to do anything. It's just there is an application property where you enable it, what kind of PBCS applications you have. There are two choices. You have PBCS Classic or OCI Gen 2. So we support both of them now. You have to just set that up in the application properties. We introduced two new export formats. I'll show you all the what the export module is. We introduced, I think I talked about this over here. Oh yeah, this was, sorry, I switched the reports. Here I wanted to show you all the configuration reports. So let's talk about that as well. So if you go to configurations module, if you ever wonder all my configurations, you know, what they are, you don't have to go through all the screens. You can just simply run over here. For example, all my workflow configurations, I can get it through a single report over here. Like these are my workflow. This is all the parameters for all the attributes of it. So sorry, I was talking about Q3 while I was covering Q2. Yeah, so we have lookups, we have workflow and list of custom properties enabled for the backup. Lookup codes are here. Okay, I think they are there. So we introduced two new audit reports, which I covered already, and new feature called restrict recall. We will talk about this in a minute. All right, so export formats. So under administration, we have two additional modules, export and migration. I'm sure you all are familiar with these services. These are the three services you can turn on and off. They all have to be running if you are using a workflow or ERP or deployment. Now, export module, what we have done over here, that we have given you a lot of out-of-the-box formats, bulk upload format, so you can go from one environment to the other environment if you decide to. CSV is a standard, format. Then the custom file format where you can use, say, pipe as a delimiter. Custom database view is mainly for on-prem customers. If they decide to use a custom views and they want to take the information out of that custom database view, you can certainly do that. EBS for all the EBS customers. So if you have hierarchy and you want to export out in the EBS format, you can do so. We recently added generations. And of course, you already had HFM planning, and table is again for the on-prem customers, that the information of the metadata will go into a table and you can connect directly to that table. And there are, pre and post execution scripts in case you want to massage the metadata before it goes out. We also support multi-environment capability in the export as well. So for example, you are doing UAT and prod, you're managing two environments in EPMware, and you want the metadata which is committed to UAT out of EPMware, then you will choose UAT over here as an example. All right, so those are the two export formats. We already talked about audit reports. Now coming to the new workflow features. So I'll have to go to the workflow task. Okay, I can choose existing one. Okay. So first is the workflow builder. So I'll go over there for the restrict recall, and then I'll go to the custom task. So restrict recall, what does it mean? That if any user who wants to recall the request from the workflow to one stage to another stage, let's submit this request in the workflow and see what the recall means here. All right, now if I want to recall this, then I must be part of the requester group or reviewer group of this stage or approver of this stage. This is the standard behavior. But if you are having, if any other user who is the administrator, not part of these requests as a requester, reviewer, approver, can actually recall as well. But if you don't want that to happen, you want only these three people to play a role, which is either a requester or the current stage requester or reviewer or approver, then you will have that opportunity to do that by enabling restrict recall. So this is an extremely powerful security feature. But if you decide that you want a flexible system where any administrator can recall, and often that is also the case, that administrator want to take over the request, rewind it, and put it back in the workflow so they can redeploy or they can change some technical properties for HFM as well as planning or OneStream, then they prefer this option not enabled. And again, you can choose that depending on the workflow you are working on. Okay, so that was something we did in Q3. Now coming back to the task, we wanted to quickly talk about reminders. So we have introduced a lot of approval email templates. So again, thanks to some of the customers and users who gave us the feedback to do this. So reminder, you can have a separate email template than the regular email. And the separate email, if you choose for mass approval or user approval or reject. So for approve or reject, you may choose user action. And for recall, you may choose say recall request from the workflow, and this is the correct. And if you choose that I want to send a reminder to the users who have not approved the lines on a request, you can do that by after these default days. So you wait for 5 days, but after that you send them email every one day, right? Or every 24 hours. You can go down to 1 hour if you like to. But again, that's your choice. So we introduced all these notifications. We created a brand new tab for it as well. All right. And of course, there are a lot of business reasons for it. Maybe if you need, either me or Tony can elaborate on that. What did we do in October release? Mainly three things. We added the new feature for allowing users to provide custom delimiter and qualifier for ERP import files. So if you're the folks who are using ERP import, they can now specify custom delimiter and qualifier for the ERP import.
And guys, ERP import, for those of you who are not using, I can see folks on the call. I know not everyone is utilizing this. Is leveraging metadata that needs to come in from an external source. So not your users that are creating this metadata and authoring in EPMware, but you have either an automated process or a manual process to feed metadata from a flat file directly into EPMware. And so the result of that is EPMware does a delta, or if it gets incremental updates, it's able to instantaneously then create a request and then push it into the workflow. And so a lot of times we see people create an automated process to just feed nightly metadata updates from a source system in. And so, here what Deven's showing is really just greater flexibility for those files and those structure to be able to define, column delimiter and text qualifiers, like custom values for those, because I think it's, what we're trying to do here is just minimize the amount of time you need to spend with other owners of other interfaces to force them to have to change their data file and their data structures as part of an EPMware project or as part of an MDM project, right? And I think that flexibility is key, because it just adds extra time into an implementation and extra requirements on the teams that necessarily aren't part of your implementation. So Deven, continue.
So basically we added a few other enhancements on the way too, like you can import the file from here itself. and do the ERP import. So typical use case for the ERP import is your upstream systems, like your HR system where you are having employee information, or your other systems like your business application, like mutual funds, right? And you are getting the new mutual fund codes into EPMware, which becomes the member in EPMware, and then ultimately to your or finance applications. All that information is coming from the upstream system, and therefore we call it ERP. So it's coming inside EPMware, goes through the governance process, validations, derivations, mapping across multiple applications. Then ultimately it goes either automatically to the target applications, or you can have manual intervention in the middle where administrator can review this, and next day it goes to the target application. All that will happen in EPMware. There are mostly people use REST API for automation part of it, but some folks use front end way of doing it too. But 99% people use REST API to create the pipe between your upstream system into EPMware and through EPMware to the target application. So there are a lot of configurations for it where you can choose what application dimension. Each line of configuration is for a dimension, how the request will be created, like what standard, what workflow. Is it partially allowed if there are 5 lines and 2 are good and 3 are bad? Then continue to create requests for the 2 lines as an example. Ignore lines. This is what delta processing that Abhi just explained. If you enable it, then it will automatically detect all the lines which have absolutely no change and ignore them, and then only pick up those lines which has been changed, like any property has changed, member has been renamed, member has been moved to another parent. It will automatically detect all of this and it will process it. But if you are giving the delta directly, only the delta, then you may turn this off because somebody has done that job and feeding into EPMware. Okay. Migration module improvements. So again, let's go to the migration module. And again, this is a very powerful feature for you to migrate the objects from UAT to Pro or Pro to UAT. So let's talk about its structure. We have 3 modules here: configuration, security, and metadata. So all the configurations are over here that you see under the configuration menu. Earlier application properties was a child of applications sub topic under configurations, but we often found that if somebody want to extract the applications configurations from one environment to the other environment, they don't want application properties to be part of it, because application properties, which comprises of connection details to the target app, you don't want to include it, because if you include it, you will blow away the actual connection information for that app. So we made it as out of it so that you can comfortably select any application you like, along with all of its components like dimensions, properties, logic scripts, hierarchy actions, and so many things along with it. So you can choose all these without having to worry that your application properties will be blown away. So we made it as part of it, but directly under configuration. So over here, you will just see application properties. That's it. And you can pick and choose if you decide to choose only 1 or 2 properties to be exported out. Again, in metadata, we have backup enabled properties that we talked earlier. And over here, you can choose which application you want to extract only the backup enabled properties, not the other part of the metadata. If you want to extract the other part of the metadata, you can choose that as well. Under security module, as usual, we have user group, security classes, provisioning, and the node level security that we also talked about in for the Q1 updates. All right. So this helps you in migrating objects from one environment to the other.
Yeah, I mean, most commonly we see this being used in, move objects over from UAT over to production when we're initially doing implementation, or even on an ongoing basis. You want to take your existing application from prod and refresh it on the UAT. So that's also another way to do it. Really, it's kind of similar to the Oracle Hyperion, like an LCM process that happens there. Again, we also generate an XML file once this export is created, and you can just grab that and move it over to the next environment. But, you know, the goal here is to make it as easy as possible for, you know, in project-based migrations or even ongoing BAU migrations.
Okay, I think we are 7 minutes away. So, so we already covered about these new email notifications that we have introduced for the workflow task: recall, user, action, mass approve, and reminder. Coming to the final slide. So what we are planning to do to add new features as part of new features is a little bit more on dashboard and advanced analytics. Additional APIs for the logic builder module so that you can, and REST APIs. So you can do, for the development team who want to integrate more and more with the EPMware. As an example, I want to automatically run a report on a daily basis. I want to add my users from my SSO automatically, as an example. We are always happy to add more adapters. And if you get an opportunity of, say, adding another 5 applications, we will always do that. Metadata reports, again, will be added based on the feedback we receive from all the clients, as well as what our internal team thinks that we should add that. And we have added few reports which I have not covered today, but you can feel free to explore in metadata section or request section, and you will find few new reports over there as well. And another idea has come that we should create a user knowledge base. So we are in process of doing that as well.
Awesome. So we got one, as you go through this, we just got one question. So if we, you know, if we don't want to release this period or this quarter, can we delay it? And the answer is yes. You can submit a ticket into our support and just let us know that you'd like to push it off for 1 cycle. We recommend that you just do it for about 1 cycle. Probably not a good idea to get several cycles back, because each release does actually have a good amount of combination of enhancements, bug fixes, and patches together in one fix. So it's better to push that off. But again, you know, you may want to just push it off for a week or push it off for a 2 week. So we're happy to do that for you guys, and, you know, just let us know that if it a release does end up you know, kind of conflicting with your regular deployment calendar, and we can definitely work with you guys. So we're just at time, and you know, wanted to thank you guys for joining today's call. If you have any questions, just shoot us a note, support@epmware.com if you're an existing customer, or, you know, check out epmware.com, give us a follow on LinkedIn, and looking forward to having this discussion with you guys every month. Of course, if you have any updates, enhancements, or, you know, recommendations on things that you'd like to see in EPMware, please do send us a note, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful week ahead. Take care. Talk to you next month. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.